everyone, and welcome to International Women's Day 2021 Choose to Challenge. We are so excited here at the Center for Global Education with our partners with the Canadian Commission for UNESCO to invite you to our conversation today. We have two wonderful, exciting guests who will be joining us to talk about International Women's Day and what it means to them and what does it mean to be a leader and an advocate for women and female identified persons across the world. And we are just so excited. Now, before we get started, I want to acknowledge that we are all joining from land around the world. And I want to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we're on today, whether we're in Vancouver or Edmonton or Toronto or Manila or Nairobi, we are all meeting from different places. And on this virtual platform, and I'd like to take and acknowledge the importance of the lands in which we call home, wherever that may be. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility to improving relationships between nations and improving our own understanding of our local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. From coast to coast to coast to around the world, we want to acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territories in Canada of the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations peoples that call this land home. Now, International Women's Day this year, or every year, is on March 8th, and it's a global day to celebrate the social and economic and cultural and political achievements of women. And this day marks a call for action to accelerate gender parity. This year, the theme is Choose to Challenge, hashtag Choose to Challenge. And we would love if you were on Twitter, we've been tweeting about this, but also as we go through the conversation today, to think about the ways that you can choose to challenge. I mean, this is a day to challenge others, but also to challenge ourselves, challenge our own biases and challenge racism and challenge misogyny and challenge all sorts of different, like feminism isn't just about women, it's about equality and human rights and all those things that are important to challenge within our society. So challenging hate in all of its form and amplifying the voices of women who have been silenced. So I'm so excited to bring together a team today and in collaboration with the Canadian Commission for UNESCO. So I want to invite Isabel, who's my friend and colleague with CC UNESCO, to welcome us and say a few words from UNESCO.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It's a pleasure to be here. I am joining you from snowy Ottawa, and I work with the Canadian Commission for UNESCO, and I love getting to connect with all of you on these online events because I have the education sector file, and I'm also the national coordinator of the UNESCO Schools Network in Canada. And I know we have a few schools in Canada joining us from this network. Of course, these events are open to all schools, just like all UNESCO schools events and publications, etc. So we're also happy to have friends from the Philippines and Kenya joining us and able to talk about this really important day that I learned this morning is not a UN day. It was actually really grassroots when it was developed by for women's rights, and of course is celebrated and commemorated by the United Nations and UNESCO. But I also love how it's been historically there for a while just to actually voice women's rights to vote and women's rights for equal rights. As my 5-year-old son told me this morning, he told me, "Bonne fête des filles." So he was very excited to tell all the girls in his class, happy Girl and Women's Day. And I think it's so important to have these conversations about how this day is inclusive and how we also need our male counterparts and all of those folks from the gender spectrum to celebrate with us. And what was particularly heartwarming this morning is that I got a special invitation from my colleagues at the commission, from my male colleagues, inviting me to a quick check-in, and it was a tribute to women, and it was all organized by our male colleagues at the commission. So I thought that was a really nice gesture to show how we can all celebrate today. I am so happy and excited to hear our two keynote speakers, Giovanna and Caitlin, about their experience being very engaged in their community. And I know Caitlin from, she's part of our youth advisory group from the Canadian Commission for UNESCO. And Giovanna, I'm excited to hear more about all the excellent work you do as well. So I think the idea of these events is really to showcase and inspire you to take action in your community. And as Sarah said, the Choose to Challenge hashtag is great because it shows us how we can all take part in basically addressing sometimes negative stereotypes and be active in our community to speak up on behalf of all human beings, and in particular today, women. So thank you for joining us, and I'll leave it to that for now. But if you have any questions, Sarah's really great at facilitating in the chat. And hopefully we'll have a Q&A, and we also love active participation. So you can also raise your hand or say you can have a question. And if you're on the Zoom call with us, then it's really easy to unmute yourself and ask. So that's always really fun to hear from different classrooms. So thanks.
Wonderful, thanks, Isabel. Before we move on and introduce Giovanna, I wanted to acknowledge some of the schools that we do have today. We have our Zoom chat here where we're live and interactive with the speakers, but that doesn't mean you're not able to interact if you're not on our Zoom call. For those that are joining us on YouTube today, I know we have Westwood Community High School in Fort McMurray who's going to be joining, St. Joseph's High School in Saskatoon, École Secondaire Francophone in Niagara Welland, and some Argyle students who are our homeschool student liaisons through our public school here in Edmonton. We have the Calgary French International School who's joining us halfway through. So they're gonna be about a half hour delayed, but we wanna say hi to them. And then of course our Fulford Academy who's here from Brockville, Ontario on our screen, and Trafalgar who's here, hello Trafalgar, out in Vancouver. We have MVale in MVale, Ontario, and then our Anglophone GNB-EECD, a nice acronym, from Fredericton, New Brunswick. And that is just our Canadian schools. And then we have all of our internationals. We have St. Austin's Academy from Nairobi, Kenya, lovely, wonderful school. Thank you, Kenya, for joining us. We have our friends from Colégio Maginot in Brazil who are joining us on YouTube. We have St. Joseph's Academy, 1 in the morning for them, and they're joining us live today. Oh my goodness, you guys are amazing. Welcome. Can't wait to hear about your thoughts and what's going on in your communities around International Women's Day. And then we have 3 American schools joining us. A&M Consolidated from Texas, Mill Pond from Westboro, Massachusetts, and Panahahu School in Honolulu, Hawaii. Oh my goodness, so many schools that are joining us both live and then who wanted me to acknowledge it and do a shout out for when they watch on YouTube later today, because unlike our friends in Manila, the time difference, they were not willing to commit to the 1 a.m. Just wonderful to have you all here today. Now I want to introduce one of our keynote speakers who's joining us from, she is Canadian and joining us from Seattle though today. Giovanna was the Canadian Country Board Chair of Global Dignity Canada, but I understand she's now the chair of the International for Global Dignity Today International. She's also the CEO and co-founder of 2 companies, MC2 and MNC Consulting, and she plays a role of international technology entrepreneur and thought leader. She is, I've seen her at Davos. I've seen the contributions to the Huffington Post, the Hill Times, CBC Radio. She is wonderful and has been, in 2000, was named one of Canada's top most 100 powerful innovator women in Canada. Amazing. She is a World Economic Forum Global Shaper and graduated from Carleton University here in Canada. But thank you, Giovanna, for joining us today. I mean, this is an amazing CV you have. I cannot wait to hear about how, like, your journey from Carleton, Ottawa to Seattle to chair of Global Dignity International. I mean, we've worked with Global Dignity for a few years on that event, which is this amazing, which I'm sure you will highlight. But I'm just so excited to hear more about your journey. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for your warm introduction. I am so delighted and excited to be here with all of you. I want to thank all of you for being here, especially those for whom it's 1 in the morning. I want to give you mad props for staying up so late. And I think this is going to be an incredible event. So thank you so much for being here and for making inclusion an important part of your day to day. And so Choose to Challenge. So just kind of moving into my personal story, I'll preface it with a bit about why Choose to Challenge is important for me, and then we'll move into how I got to where I am today. Choose to Challenge at its root is about inclusion. And inclusion requires changes to the systems that govern our ways of living, like our workplaces and the people who are running our country. And changes to these systems require a thorough examination and a healthy assessment of the history and policies that have enabled specific groups to be excluded in the past. And in order for any of these changes to be possible, stakeholders and multiple groups have to be able to work together. And all of this work requires a very important something, and that something is trust. It's hard to work with someone when you don't trust them, and when you think that they don't wish the best for you, or when you think they don't represent what you believe in. And I believe this is where kindness comes in. Kindness is when you wish something well for someone else without expecting a specific result or a reward. I believe kindness is the fabric that enables a healthy relationships and opens possibilities to long-standing changes. Now, I want to be clear. I don't believe that kindness is the solution to everything, because of course, in order to change deep institutional issues and policies, often legal structures and ways of governing, you need to have very healthy and open dialogue. And I'm not saying that kindness is what's going to get us there, but I believe that kindness is the fabric that underpins those conversations that will enable those healthy dialogues, right? I believe that kindness can actually help open people up to feel more receptive to one another, that will allow those conversations to happen in the first place, and for those conversations to be healthy and long-lasting. For me, kindness is the choice to treat people with understanding, love, and compassion. It's believing in the basic human value of another person and the understanding that we all want to be happy. And when we're kind to someone, they open up, and it makes it easier to communicate both ways. And it can also lead to healthier relationships at school, in the workplace, and in our communities. So I've spent much of my life since the age of 15 working towards building this kind of world, this world rooted in kindness and inclusion. And so I'm going to take us back to where I started. So I was born in Ottawa, Ontario, which is, of course, as many of you will know, Canada's capital. And I have a big family of 6 brothers and sisters. We're Italian Canadian, super loud. Like my mom's side is Scottish Irish. My dad's side's Italian. My father's side were immigrants to Canada. My grandfather moved from Italy to Montreal, where he had been previously a really well-known journalist and also a judge in Italy. And then he moved to Canada, and he had to start off selling hot dogs at a hot dog stand so that he could make a living for our family. And that's just one very common story in Canada, right? Of new immigrants who have come to the country who are doing their best to create a good life for themselves. And so I was born in Ottawa, and at the age of 6, we moved to Rockland. So my big family got bigger, and we moved to a French Canadian town called Rockland, 45 minutes east outside of Ottawa. And I had a really beautiful childhood. I went to French school, I went to an English high school, and so I had really the best of both worlds, right? Everything that is Canadian. And growing up, we were a loud, rowdy household. At the dinner table, we would talk about all kinds of things, from philosophy to the arts, to just, generally how to build a better world. And my parents always said, especially to the girls, you can be anything you want to be when you grow up. Really, you can. And we didn't have a lot of money growing up. We were 7 kids. And even there were some times where we had to get food from a food bank because we were 7 kids and my dad was the only one who worked. And so from a young age, I learned that, we had to work really hard. If you wanted to get something done, you had to work really hard to get that done. And I got my first job when I was 14, working at a golf course, in a bag shop, cleaning the clubs. And I was so grateful for that job because it allowed me to buy myself new clothes and to do fun things that I didn't have really the opportunity for when I was younger. And so that work ethic, you know, I developed at a very young age. And so what it also allowed me to develop was a sense of gratitude for all the things that I do have and for the different opportunities that were available to me. And today I've gotten to where I am because of the kindness of many people, some family, some friends, and some complete strangers. But I could not have gotten to where I am without their support. And how did I get to where I am? So I would say that it really started at the age of 15. So I remember often when I was a child looking on TV and seeing all of the things that are happening around the world, and I wished I could help. And I said, I just wish I had money. I could donate to this charity or this cause, but I had no money. And it was unimaginable to me how I would get there. And so I was very fortunate in grade 10 to get a co-op placement on Parliament Hill. So my family had moved back to Ottawa at this point, working for my local member of parliament. And as a co-op student. And while I was there, you know, my MP said to me, her name was Marlene Catterall. She was the chief government whip working for Jean Chrétien at the time, who was prime minister. She said, you know, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, well, I want to be a humanitarian. I want to help a lot of people. And she said, interesting. Well, you know, if you want to help a lot of people, you can do additional things, right, to being a humanitarian, which in my mind was going and volunteering somewhere. She said, in addition to doing that, you could go into politics, for example, and you could help a whole country. Or you could go into business and you could help a lot of people in a different way. And that really stuck with me. And the first book she gave me to read when I was 15 was by Farley Mowat, and it was the Ichalmiut, the people of the deer. And it was about the time, it was about Farley Mowat's life living in the Arctic, in the Barren Lands, in what is now the region of Arviat, which is a place that I've now actually come to work with very closely through my work at Global Dignity. And I learned about it when I was 15. And that was the first time I learned also about the Indigenous peoples in our country and the many injustices that they've experienced, and that we have to work collectively towards building reconciliation at 15. And it was only because of that book. And so all of this led me to work in politics. So at the age of 20, I was working in the Prime Minister's office in Canada. So I was very active. I became super engaged and as a volunteer. So I was working for the Prime Minister. At 22, I left politics and I backpacked around Europe and I worked at a hostel and I cleaned toilets and it was super gross. But it was really healthy for me because, you know, I'd gone through all these various life experiences. And then I decided to become an entrepreneur when I was in my early 20s, shortly after that, because I had lived all around the world and I saw these other young, successful people building companies. And I said, well, if they can do it, why can't I do it? I know nothing about business. I studied politics, but like, I can do this, right? I've got this. And so, you know, caring about people, caring about social impact, caring about volunteerism, I started my two companies, one a communications consultancy and the other a tech startup built around social impact technology and campaigns. And in this process, I became the Canadian chair for Global Dignity, which is an international, non-religious, non-political NGO dedicated to empowering kids K-12 with dignity in 80 countries. We impact 1 million children a year. And I've now been the Canadian chair for since 2012, so I guess 9 years. I'm still the Canadian chair, and I'm also now the chair of the board of directors globally. So I'm both the chair for Canada and internationally, and that's an honor that I very gratefully accepted earlier this year, and with which I've kicked the year off. But basically, all this to say, I'm sharing this story with you because I did not grow up in a home where everything was handed to me. Like, I grew up in the context of like, you know, a huge family, and we had to work really hard for everything that we were given. And for me, my success came from the fact that I was honestly in many ways kind. Like I was a social butterfly. I loved people and I brought people together, and that allowed me to make a lot of friends. And those friends helped me become successful. And I would not be here and have accomplished what I have accomplished without those friends. And it's a really important message that I'm sharing with you, because it doesn't matter where you came from and it doesn't matter your background. Everyone is going to go through different life challenges and struggles. And there are ways to accomplish your goals. And I would say the only failure in life is to stop trying. That is the only failure. And some of my struggles, right? And so here are some great photos I'll speak to in a second, but some of my struggles I'll share with you because they've been real for me. So one was I struggled with a sense of imposter syndrome. So I really, really felt like, as I was growing professionally and getting invited to all these cool events and speaking around the world, I felt like I didn't deserve it. Like a part of me was so afraid people were going to find out that I was this like nobody girl from like this, small town in Canada, and that I didn't deserve any of it. That's ballyhoo, right? Like that whole concept, it's something that women in particular deal with. It's a very common, like women-centric issue. I don't know why. It's just one of these things that we struggle with more so than men. Often, if you present the same opportunity to a man as to a young woman, the man will say, yeah, for sure, I can do it. Absolutely no problem. And the woman will be like, well, I don't know. And she'll be much more reserved about like, can I do it? Can I not do it? And so that's a pretty typical thing. Another challenge that I struggled with was confidence, right? And having confidence that, yes, I can do this. And I had to really push myself to develop that confidence, because it doesn't always come naturally. You have to build it. And the more I helped people and the more friends I developed, the more confidence I developed. And so what I want to share with you also is that if you feel like, you have a really great idea and you really believe that you could make it happen, but you're not sure how, but then you also feel like you have all these different things that you're struggling with, please don't worry. Those can all be managed. You can get around all of them. And if you just talk to the right people and really just, all you have to do is believe in yourself for that one day and that one moment that, okay, I'm going to have this one conversation that's going to help me towards my goal. And that one conversation is a step in the right direction. Just believe in yourself in that one conversation in that one moment, because honestly, if you do that, and if that's what you do every day, you will be able to accomplish great things. And I'm just repeating this because it's so, so, so important. Like, I had to work really hard to where I am. I am now 37, and like, I'm working with a million kids all around the world, and I am accomplishing what I dreamed of doing when I was 15, which was helping a lot of people. And I'm doing that because, again, I was kind and I worked really hard. And despite my insecurities and despite the challenges that I had in my life, I was able to overcome them on a day-by-day basis by working with people who cared about me, and often ignoring the naysayers, because there are naysayers. You just have to be like, nope, I'm going to believe in the people who love me and care about me. And the photos that Sarah just showed you on the slide are just a really beautiful landscape of some of the places that I've been in my life. And so all that to say, my friends, thank you so much for being here today and for caring about inclusion and for caring about equality and about women. Happy International Women's Day. I would love to take any questions. And on a final note, please believe in yourself. If you have a dream, just go for it and believe in yourself, because you can make it happen regardless of how big it feels and you're not sure how to get there. It's possible. I promise. If I could do it, you can do it too.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Giovanna, for sharing your story. In the chat, it's filled with thank you. Your story is inspiring and moving. Thank you for sharing your story. I hope people will learn from this. All of our friends here in the meeting are just so thankful to have had you speak them today about, these messages of, perseverance and making allies and caring for people and supporting each other. I mean, I think it's true today, but it's true always that the caring network that you foster is really what will help us all succeed. And wonderful. Thank you so much, Yvonne. I know we're going to have some time for questions later, but I'd like to invite Isabel to introduce her, to introduce Kate and our youth speaker today. And then maybe we can have more of a conversation between the two of you afterwards. That'd be wonderful.
Awesome.
Yeah, and thank you so much. I echo what Sarah was saying, super inspiring. And I'm so happy to introduce now Kate Hershak. I briefly mentioned her in my introduction because she is on our CC UNESCO's Youth Advisory Group. But beyond that, she also self-claims to be an urban Inuk, an advocate for the inclusion of Indigenous youth in decision-making spaces, and I just learned from her LinkedIn page, also the co-creator and co-host of a podcast called Spilling Labrador Tea Under Cedar Trees, which I want to go check out because I love Labrador tea. I got a chance to meet Caitlin actually at the UNESCO General Conference, the Youth Forum. So she was participating then and represented Canada, and also really tried to spearhead and challenge UNESCO in trying to move forward a better integration of youth voice within the organization, and also of her Indigenous youth voice. I know that Sarah had a chance to meet her at a past COP event. So I think it's so inspiring to see individuals take local action in their local community and then also expand globally, also like Giovanna has done. So I'm very inspired to hear more from you, Kate, and from both of you. And then we'll have, as Sarah said, a really interactive Q&A after that we can get a conversation going between both of you. So I'll give the space now to Kate.
Oh my goodness. Hello, friends. This is so exciting. I'm so happy to see you all. So first, like Ulukut, Lesbian Gava, Nana Kimeligan, and Nana Tiach Eva Adams, Kudrak Mutuyunga, Nanunak Lakwamin, Matula. So good morning from over here on the West Coast. I am Caitlin. My traditional name is Elisapie. I am from Kudrak, Quebec, with ties to Nunavut. And I live on the Lekwungen territory, which is Victoria and Vancouver Island. And I'm so excited to be here with you today. So when I was thinking about this topic, Choose to Challenge, I was thinking about all these wonderful people in my life that have challenged me to be better and to help me grow. And so when I reflect upon the women in my life that have taught me to be kind, strong, and an advocate for rights of others and myself. My older sister, who taught me that kindness and vulnerability is the way to navigate with your true self. My mom has faced many hardships and has been relentless in her ability to dust herself off and get back up. And my grandmothers on both sides that taught me how to advocate for rights and the rights for myself and others. Of course, though, in addition to the strong women in my family, I must acknowledge the men as well. My dad, who taught me how to listen empathetically and with intent, my stepdad, who taught me patience, and my uncles that taught me how to fish and to love the land and waters. Growing up, I am of mixed ancestry, so trying to navigate myself in this space has always been a challenge that I've been working through, and it's really through my education path that I have really found how to accept myself and love myself. So growing up, there was on territory that is not yours, right? Of hanging out with all these other lovely Indigenous kids and then realizing you're a little bit different from them. That when you get handed coloring sheets, they're different from others. Mine are, igloos and nukshuks, and the kids next to me had longhouses and totem poles. And I went, oh, I'm different. But what does that mean? And so my mom is so wonderful, and she always made sure that I knew that I was Inuk and I knew I was special and I was different and that's okay. And she did everything she can to make sure I could see some of myself in the areas that she tried to put me in. And I got into college and I got to go into Indigenous studies, and I got to learn more about Canada's history with Indigenous people, and realizing how that actually impacted my life very, very personally. My dad is a survivor of the 60s scoop, so I wasn't fully connected to my culture as much as I wanted to be. But in this education space, I was able to understand why colonization has made things the way that it is, and then what tools I need to do and learn to be able to access my culture. And so in doing so, in my culture, we tell stories. And so I like to share one of my favorite stories with you. And it's the story of Sedna. I'm just looking out to the screen because I have it written down. So in my territory, her name is Sedna. Her name is also Naluriak. And also she has 2 other names, but my Nuktutu is still not that great. So I'm not going to try. Once there's a young woman named Sedna. She lived in the Arctic with her mother and father. She loved her mother and father so much that she was very content. Her father was a very skilled hunter and provided very well for his family. Sedna had plenty of food and warm furs to wear. She liked the comfort of her parents' home and refused to marry. Many Inuit women had to marry very off the bat, so then it takes like the relief off of their parents to provide. But many Inuit men desired Sedna for a wife and asked her parents for permission to marry her. She refused them all. Even when her parents insisted it was time for her to marry, she refused to follow tradition and obey them. She continued for quite some time until one particular Inuk came to visit Sedna. This man promised Sedna that he would provide for her plenty of food to eat and furs for clothes and blankets. Sedna agreed to marry him. After they were man and wife, he took her away to an island, and they were all alone on the island, and he revealed that he was not a man at all, but a bird dressed up as a man. Sedna was furious, but she was trapped on this island and had to make the best of it. He, of course, was not a good hunter and could not provide her with meat and furs. All the birdman can do was catch fish. And Sedna got very tired of eating fish. They lived together on an island for some time until Sedna's father decided to come visit. Upon seeing his daughter was so unhappy and her husband had lied to her, he killed the birdman. And Sedna and her father got to his kayak and set off home. The birdman's friends discovered what he had done and flapped his wings so hard, flapping their wings that resulted in a big storm. Sedna's father was so frightened that the storm would fill his kayak with water and that he would drown in the icy waters, so he threw Sedna overboard. And he thought that he would be able to get the birds from stop flapping their wings, but it did not work. And Sedna didn't want to be left in the water, so she held onto the kayak so tightly and would not let go of the boat. Fearing that she would flip him, her father cut off her fingers one joint at a time. From each of her finger joints, a different sea creature was born. They became the fish, the seals, the walrus, the whales, and Sedna became known as the mother of the sea. So what I found really beautiful about the story was that through all this hardship Sedna experienced, she was still able to share her gifts with others. So I challenge you to continue to find all the beautiful gifts that you carry and remember that the world's an interesting place with you in it.
I'm just going to share. I know that you shared some pictures with me like Giovanna, so I want to share them with our, with our friends here. And maybe you can, such a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Yes. So there is my grandma and I at my college graduation, a depiction of what Sedna looked like. And then my mom and I did leave out that I have competed in beauty pageants. I was Miss Vancouver Island 2015. I was a finalist at Miss Canada. And that's when I took my mom to Montreal so she could watch me compete. And then I was also Miss National Coastal British Columbia 2018. And then there's me, my big sister, and then that is me in UNESCO headquarters with a bunch of wonderful youth I had the privilege of working with.
Thank you so much. As Isabel said, I was very privileged to meet you at COP, so the Conference of Parties for the United Nations Framework and Convention of Climate Change. So it's this big UN conference on climate change and what should the world do about climate change. And you were there as a youth leader on behalf of Canada with a few other individuals representing sort of the voice and champions of youth. I mean, I know people are so interested in how to get involved, and like, what would be your piece of advice? And Giovanna, I think this would be wonderful for you as well. Like, what would be your piece of advice? What should people do if they want to get involved? Whether it be climate change or women's issues or any way of supporting someone else in their community, how should they start this journey? And what really helped you in that sense? Kate, maybe I'll ask you first, and then I know Isabel has questions as well. Kate, over to you. What do you?
Sure. So I think the biggest piece of advice I would give is that instead of speaking from here, speak from here. And every time you speak from your heart, you're telling your truth. And folks will listen more because you know that it's coming with love. And don't be afraid to try new things. That's how I got into beauty pageants. I got really bored. And I saw my friend like posted a link to like Miss BC, and I applied to it thinking I wasn't going to get in because I am only 4'11". I'm very short, and I'm not very thin, and so I wasn't this like typical like beauty queen body type like person. And I was like, oh my goodness, what am I doing? And I got a call the next day for an interview for this pageant, and they asked how I heard about it. And I said, oh, I heard it from my friend so-and-so. And they went, yes, okay, you're in, you leave next week. And I said, oh my goodness. And I called my mom and I was like, hey mom, I got into a pageant. My mom goes, what are you doing? I was like, I don't know. I got bored and I just wanted to try something new. Pardon me. And then I went and I did it, and I realized that it was more about what is in your heart and what you care about most. And that's what makes you a good leader.
Thank you. And Giovanna.
I love that. And Caitlin, I'm so inspired by your story. Thank you so much. And I also love the story of Sedna. It's a really beautiful story. So thank you for sharing that. For me, in terms of where to start, so if you care about something, but you're not really sure like what to do, I would recommend just volunteering, like spend an hour, like just maybe do like a really quick search, like a Google search, and find an organization that you can get involved with and just like commit to 1 hour, right? On a Saturday or a Sunday. And just do it. You don't have to become a member. You don't have to show up every week, just 1 hour. And I think that's a really, really good way of just gauging if you like the people, right? So you need to figure out, do I like these people that are also I'm going to be volunteering with? And, you know, do I like this organization and what they represent? Okay, great. And then just, you know, really assess the situation and then figure out if it's something that you know, you can care about enough to be more regularly involved with. So the most important thing is to not overwhelm yourself with choices and to not feel like the issue that you care about is so big that you can't do anything, because there's always something that can be done. You just need to take bite-sized steps in the right direction, micro actions as I call them, towards accomplishing your goal.
That's such great advice, because we can all do something. We don't have to be leaders of Global Dignity International. Everyone can do something in a way in their community. So we're going to open to, I'm going to have Isabel's going to come in and ask a question. And while she's doing that, I want to, we have Fulford here. We have 2 Trafalgar sites, and we have our friends in Manila and in Nairobi joining us. And I would love an opportunity for each site to be able to ask a question. And so as Isabel's going to ask a question and they'll answer, but maybe we'll go next to Fulford after Isabel, and then Trafalgar. we have an up close Trafalgar and an in the back Trafalgar. And so we'll go in the back first and then up close second, and then we'll open it up to our friends from Manila and then Nairobi. So that'll be our order after Isabel. So Isabel, over to you while our sites prepare their questions.
Oh yeah, well, it seems like full for, I don't want to take too much space, but my question just is about, because it's about Choose to Challenge, about your challenges actually, as women trying to achieve so much. And just a little, side note, parenthesis, at UNESCO, we really try to push for girls and women in science. That is one field that we see still a big gap, even in the Canadian context of women becoming scientists. And my partner, my husband, is actually an engineer, and he hires a lot of engineers and architects, and he's tried to make it a mandate to have at least 50% of his team women. And that has proved to be a challenge, and just trying to do a cultural change. And he also even told me personal anecdotes of women candidates that are amazing and super smart and have this long resume. And then when they ask for salary expectations, they ask for half what a male will ask for. So they have more experience than a male candidate. And in the private sector, they don't put a job, they actually don't put your salary expectations. You have to say what you want to earn because what you're worth. And he has come up and said that these women are actually asking for half the amount of these male candidates, and they have double the experience. So it just shows that in all of our systems, there's still a huge gap for women to try to move ahead in certain fields. So just from your personal experience, I know you've talking about inspiring ways to move ahead, but what are some of the challenges that you have maybe faced and how you've kind of overcome that?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking it. So I work in STEM, so science, tech, engineering, math. And my sister actually is a well-known gravitational waves astrophysicist. So she works on black holes. And she previously worked for NASA at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. She went to Caltech and studied with some of the smartest leaders in the space. And now she works, she's a professor at the University of Connecticut, and then also exchanges with New York University. So she talks a lot about this on like Amy Poehler's Smart Girls and all kinds of cool places. I'm so proud of my sister because she had to work really, really hard to get to where she is today. And she had to overcome a lot of challenges. And, one of the issues that she's dealt with a lot, and I'll speak very briefly for myself as well, but that she's dealt with a lot, the women in really kind of in technical sciences that she's either mentoring or working with, are experiencing a lot of serious anxiety, sometimes things like panic attacks, because they feel so like sometimes it feels like the system isn't set up for them. And so they really have to support each other. And my sister is a trailblazer in this space and actively talks about this at conferences and has actually been in the Wall Street Journal talking about these issues. And because of that work, things are starting to open up. And not just my sister, but people like my sister who are working in the space who care. And I share this example because like she is in a very, very specialized field where there aren't a lot of women. And she is an example of someone who is actively promoting women and supporting women and is changing the structure around her because she's doing the public awareness, because she's sharing those stories. Likewise, I endeavor to do this through my work with organizations like Women in Cloud. It's a 100 million person impact organization based in Seattle. We're bringing $1 billion in economic access to women-led STEM companies by 2030. Because again, one of the issues, as you mentioned, Isabel, is that women are often undervalued. Either they undervalue themselves or their work is undervalued. And so they're not winning the big contracts. Women are only getting 2% of contracts of $1 million or more in STEM. And that's bananas because there's so much money out there, right? So on a macro scale, it's very important, right? continue to do this work to change things. And on an individual scale, it's also important to value ourselves. And so I see, can you guys still hear me okay? My connection.
Yeah. Oh, maybe we'll take this opportunity to transition to Kate. You just cut out there for a bit, Giovanna, but
That's okay. All good. Off to you, Kate.
Okay. Yes, I would say the challenges I've experienced is being a youth and trying to be in decision-making spaces, being compounded by like being like an Inuk woman, and then going into these spaces like COP and trying to really advocate that Indigenous people know the science of climate change and we know how to best take care of our own lands, and that we need to work in partnership together, because I do a lot of decolonization and reconciliation work in international development. I work for an international development agency, and just the work that I do is so emotional, because how can it not be? Because you care about your land, you care about the people who live in your land, and trying to get other folks to understand that we've been around for a very long time and our knowledge is very well documented, and we need to be really seen as leaders in this field of climate change if we're going to mitigate any kind of continuous catastrophes. And just that, you know, Indigenous youth are very special, and it should be seen as a privilege to work alongside of them instead of a right.
wonderful. Thank you so much, Kate. All right, we lots of questions coming in on YouTube, and I'm sure in the classroom as well. We want to first go over to Fulford Academy. I saw you coming up to the screen earlier, so I know you have questions. You feel free to unmute and ask. Hello. You might have to come up closer because you're quite quiet. So come right to the screen. Wonderful, thanks.
Hi, I'm Salma from Fulford Academy, and I have like some questions. So basically today we are talking about women in general and how far we have come. But I think that we missed something really important. So here at Fulford we have like a lot of international people. We're an international student. So we know a lot about different cultures, different countries, different communities, and we know enough to know that some women suffer and they don't have like the basic human rights, and I think that this is like the issue we should like talk about more, especially now that we're trying to improve like our lives and put our human rights like in front, and especially that we're living in a male-dominated like world. So what can we do to help those women who are like suffering and who can't get like their basic human rights? And if there's like some companies or like organizations we can like see, and maybe some advice to help them or to support them.
Thank you so much, Fulford. Wonderful question. Kate, would you like to tackle first, or Giovanna?
Should we get Trafalgar maybe a few questions, just because I realize we're running out of time, so maybe we can do like a series of questions and back to the speakers.
Trafalgar, distance Trafalgar, or close up Trafalgar, either one of you choose sites. Do you have a question that you would like to ask? We'll have a little pool that they can respond to of questions. Yes, I see someone coming right up, so I'll go to you first. You're up close, Trafalgar, you have glasses on, oh, and someone's coming up from the back.
Yeah, come here. The camera is here, and
so we have a mask and a hoodie first, and then just the mask and a ponytail second.
sure.
What was the one step that you took that if you wouldn't be here today? What was the one big step that helped you get noticed to this extent?
It was quite quiet, but I heard, what was the one step you took to get noticed? Is that what you?
And if you didn't take it, you wouldn't be here this day, and it wouldn't have been to the success that you were to have, that would have been developed.
All right. Thank you so much. All right, next Trafalgar, I muted you, so I'm gonna ask you to unmute. Just because there we go. Awesome.
If you're like very, like, for example, if you're like, I'm 12, how is another way you can get involved if you're not really old enough to volunteer yet?
Ah, great question. Oh my goodness, we have so many juicy questions to respond to here. Maybe we will make sure to get in our friends from Kenya and Manila as well. So we already have a few juicy questions to get through. Oh, it's gonna be hard for Giovanna and Kate. But is there a friend in Kenya who would like to represent? Okay, Ian, go ahead. You're always great, Ian. Thanks.
Okay, so both Kate and Giovanna mentioned can undervalue themselves, and I feel like especially among like this generation, it's been a real problem. Like many ladies now have insecurities about things that shouldn't be there. Like an example, this impossible standard of beauty or how a body is supposed to look like, which is what Caitlin mentioned, and really moved me how she doesn't bother her at all, but she values herself in this way, which is very self-sufficient. So like, what advice would you give to any young girl who's struggling with those issues right now? Because those issues can end up making them not work up to their full potential. And we really need that full potential to help make this world more sustainable for everyone.
Amazing, Ian. Thank you so much. Such a great question. And thank you to Isabel, who's recording all these in the chat so we don't lose track of them. All right. And finally, a friend from the Philippines. Is there anyone there who would like to? Carol, I see that you've, yes, okay, so unmute and we'll love to take your question.
Hi, I'm Creel. So I'm representing our school, St. Joseph's Academy, all the way from the Philippines. So my question is, what if we are coming from a very patriarchal culture where women struggle to be respected and taken seriously and given the equal opportunities men are given? How can we possibly overcome that?
Wow, such impactful questions and important ones too. Giovanna, Kate, who wants to tackle some of these thoughtful questions first? Go ahead, Giovanna, you do first.
I'll go for it. So I will actually, I think I'll start with the most immediate last question. Was it from our friend from the Philippines? So thank you for that question. What do you do in a situation of a patriarchal society where women don't have equal rights, and how do you go about accomplishing your dreams in that kind of context? So this is a challenging question, but totally possible to still make movement in those contexts. So I would start with, the first thing is you have to be able to learn how to work within your society to make change within your society. And in that context, you can become a public speaker. You can start, if it's safe for you, if it's safe in your culture to be a public speaker as a woman, then that's the first step to being able to share, right? And to educate others in a way that's culturally appropriate and that will be received. And I've seen really good examples of different women who have done this. I'd be happy to share a short list after the call, if that would be helpful, of just different women who've overcome some of these struggles from different cultures. And then, following that, you can build on your local successes to a more international audience. But it's certainly possible. I would just say start with your local community and start with working within what's available to you, and then expand outwards. Caitlin, did you want to tackle that one, or is there another question you wanted to move on to?
Sure. I just want to first lightly touch on the first question that was asked. about women's safety basically is strategy is really important. And I recognize that too, like in Canada, we have our own issues when it comes to women's safety. And it's really important to build strategic alliances with folks who can advocate that it's safer for them to do so. That's really, really important. As well as loving the women through everything they go through, like loving the person through their trauma is really important as well. And then for the second one, how do we get involved if you're not old enough to volunteer? Just really that service to community does not have to live inside of an institution. So if you want to like bake cookies and drop them off somewhere with your family, or like just really just smiling at other human beings to like create this kind of like positivity wave. You don't always have to go to an organization or an institution to spread love within your own community. And then the one about what Ian asked about, what would you give advice to young girls, is that you are enough. Just turn out all the noise. You are enough. You are beautiful. You are meant to be where you are to learn and grow. And it's okay if you don't get where you want to go right away. Everybody's path is different, and that's what makes you unique and special.
And I'd actually like to add on that, Caitlin, that really beautiful last point, that everyone is unique and special. Someone said to me once that comparison kills dreams. And I really believe that that's true, right? It's important to not compare yourself to other people. It's really important to not like go on Facebook and say, oh my gosh, that person has done that, or that person looks like this, and then compare yourself to what they are and what you're not. Because you have qualities in you that are different than what that person has too. And so it's really important, because that can crush dreams, right? When you start comparing yourself and your successes to other people, that can really lead to a situation where you're not feeling empowered. So I would really recommend start with loving yourself, and just that can start with just believing that you have value, right? Like you are a person and you're alive and you have value, and that value is beautiful, and that value is worthy of accomplishing your dreams. And what step can you take? This is one of the questions. What step can you take toward achieving that dream? I would say make a little task list. Just take out a piece of paper and write down 3 things, right? So if your dream is, I want to solve world hunger, then go and write down 3 ways that you could do that. One could be, you could bring, a can of soup to your next door neighbor who's hungry, or who's a senior citizen, or who, they need some food. It doesn't even have to be to a local soup kitchen. Going back to that concept of, you don't have to go to a soup kitchen to volunteer. You can actually do it in your own community, like Caitlin said. And so, just write down 3 little things. And by doing those 3 things, right? So bringing canned soup to my neighbor. How else am I going to solve world hunger? Well, I could also give an apple to a homeless person next time I see them. And then finally, one other step in that right direction could be, I'm going to write a post on Facebook about the importance of supporting, initiatives for food scarcity in my community. Those are 3 little simple and easy ways. And by doing that, you are actually contributing to solving world hunger. And you'll find that as you do that, other people will react. And so that's a contribution.
That's such a great closing, because I think we are wrapping up pretty soon, but that's really inspiring, concrete 3 tiny things and actions that you can do in your community. And my last point that I wanted to get back to, something Caitlin said that really struck me, and I think it's important for you all to hear this, is that women's rights is not just for women. When she talked about women's safety and finding allies, that also means boys and men are part of the conversation, and whatever gender spectrum, however you identify, you are part of the conversation. So for me, Choose to Challenge really means speaking up and being an ally. So I challenge all of you women, boys, genderqueer, however you identify, that you are part of the conversation and you are part of the solution. So I think that's really inspiring. And I was so inspired to hear Kate and Giovanna speak about really concrete ways to take action today. Sarah? Oh.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much to both of our speakers today. The chat discussion was amazing. The questions were so fantastic. I wish we had had more time to really delve into. We could do a whole nother hour. We could do a whole morning on this, I think, and really get into ways that we can all create supportive communities, whether we be reaching out through social media, or we're working in our schools, or we're working in our homes and our faith groups. There are so many ways in which you can instill the values of community and empowerment to your friends and your family and those around you. So challenge yourself to undertake, to list a thing or two things or three things that you could do in the next year when you join us next year for International Women's Day. And you could tell us, last year, these were my 3 goals and I met 1, or I met 3, and we'd love to hear again on how you're choosing to challenge yourself and your community. So thank you, everyone. Giovanna, Kate, Isabel, Manila, Kenya, Trafalgar, Fulford, everyone who's online, and I see a lot. We didn't even get to our YouTube questions. Everyone who's joined us today, thank you. Happy International Women's Day, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye, everyone.
International Women's Day.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.